It looks to me like they are trying to become something new, which is admirable and fine and what Slot wants to do. But there's always that awkward period where if the thing you're trying to be doesn't work, part of you is thinking, should we just be what we used to be? Should we just do the stuff that we know works?
What madness did we just watch this weekend? Another Liverpool game, another late goal. Call an ambulance, but not for title-charging Crystal Palace. Arsenal Football Club exercised their demons at St James's Park, which had to be to them what Harrenhal has been to Daemon Targaryen. Manchester United continue to lead the lead statistically in those key ex-depression and ex-misery categories. That's why we watch so many late goals, so many jackknifing emotions, so many cliffhangers. Premier League scriptwriters were either electing to craft plot twist perfection for us, or they were drunk. Doesn't matter, because they just dropped the Premier League version of the perfect episode of a TV series. It was their Sopranos Pine Barrens, their Wires Middle Ground, their Game of Thrones Reign of Castamere. Felt like a big swing weekend. And to break it all down, it's a joy to welcome, from that pulsating orb that is Harrogate, Yorkshire, the Voltamardy of words, or is it verds? It's my friend in pod. It's Mr. Rory Smith.
It's good to know that you're not going overboard just as Liverpool lost, Rog.
Oh, is that the feeling that is breaking through the icy depression? Joy. I don't know. I don't do Schadenfreude. I'm over that raw. But what a weekend. Saturday, up to reveal first time that each of Chelsea, Liverpool and Manchester United all lost on the same day in the Premier League since April 16th, 1994. Louis van Gaal used to say, in what full world we live? What's going on, baby?
It felt like a real vibe shift weekend, I've got to admit. It's September, Rog. It's 6 games in. It's early. The problem is, you see all these big results, you make these conclusive statements, and then everyone has to go and play football again next week, and it changes everything. But
it's annoying how that happens.
I know, it gets in the way of the real business, which is conclusions.
Knee-jerk conclusions.
Knee-jerk conclusions is what we're in it for, not football matches. But it did feel like, especially after what happened on Sunday, it did feel like a bit of a momentum swing in the Premier League at the top. And I think it's really just an advert for how balanced the league is. That Brighton winning at Chelsea is not a colossal shock. Manchester United losing at Brentford is whatever the opposite of a shock is. That was a result that literally everybody saw coming. I think we have to kind of shift our expectations a little bit. These are not the kind of mismatches they used to be. Everyone is really good.
Yeah, by the way, whenever a team I care about, Everton, the Bears, the White Sox, whatever, take the field, I either tweet out or feel in my head, I feel like ready to be hurt again. Ultimately, football is what you've just said, to make knee-jerk conclusions. Football, ultimately, we love it because we are ready to be wrong again. We're ready to make ridiculous... The only true football proves is none of us know anything. But here is what I seriously did want to ask you before we dive in. Big picture about this season. The manner of the losses. On Saturday, 8 goals netted after the 90th minute or more, most ever in a single day in the competition's entire history. Arsenal added to that on Sunday quite deliciously, and then some. So many reasons for it. Size of the rosters, extreme number of elite game changes available on so many benches, calibre of the coaches, tactical tweaks they're capable of making, which the Premier League has never really had before, this level of brilliant brains in a bottle on the sideline. But how do you understand and explain it to yourself?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things, Rog. You gave me a bit of forewarning on this, so I've had time to work up a theory. So I think...
we need a sting for when you drop in a theory.
100%. Something sort of scientific, maybe with a test tube.
Where the sun don't shine.
So the first thing is, for there to be late winners, you need games that are in the balance. So you need games that are close. So I think the first thing is, the key ingredient is that there is a spread of talent. That Brentford and Brighton, whoever else it might be, they have got players that can win games against elite opposition. You're not going into games where someone's 4-0 up, except if you're Manchester City against Burnley. And the second thing is what you just mentioned, that look at the players that teams are bringing off the bench. And the example actually that really struck me was one of the few games where there wasn't a late winner this weekend. Forest against Sunderland. Nottingham Forest having a miserable time of it. The Postacogluites are in Exodus in the desert, to get my biblical scripture wrong.
It'll only be for 40 years, lads. Don't worry about it. It'll go like that.
You're used to it. But look at the players that Forest brought off the bench. Amari Hutchinson, James McAtee. You're bringing on these players who would be in any other Premier League era.
Morgan
Gibbs-White, who would be starting games. You already have players like Elliot Anderson, Callum Hudson-Odoi on the field. There is so much quality that after about 60, 70 minutes, most teams now are throwing on 3, 4, 5 high quality and, crucially, Rog, not tired footballers. And that's why it's happening. So you've got these two ingredients mixing and matching. Games that are in the balance, and then these late interventions from high-quality players who have got fresh legs. And the net result there is lots of late goals.
We're all starters and finishers now, Raw. This is the era in which we play. And it matters not. Either way, whatever your theory is, listeners, this weekend was jaw-dropping, sets up really an epic charge towards Christmas in plot-boiling fashion. When you look at the table, right now, Raw, we simply have no idea who's good, who's relegatable, not you Wolves, and who's for real. It's one of the greatest opening games the Premier League's ever had.
Yeah, and it feels like a continuation of last season, because I think the main theme that I took from last season was that there are so many good teams in the Premier League. There was this ongoing debate, certainly over here, and I suspect in the US as well, about whether the Premier League was any good. That iteration, that edition of the Premier League, was it high quality or low quality? As though it matters. It doesn't matter. Who cares? It's entertaining. That's all that matters. My feeling on that was very much that you could tell from how many teams could take points off each other that it was one of the highest quality, if not the highest quality Leeds versions of the Premier League we've had. And I think this season, despite all that money that the Big Six, the traditional Big Six, spent last season, it's just continued that. There is a huge amount of quality through the league. And I'm not sure we've kind of fully accepted that in the way we assess performances. It's going to have to change the way that we respond to results, what we consider to be a good and bad result, what we consider to be good and bad performances, particularly from managers, will have to change as we internalise this idea that actually you don't need to get 99 points to win the title, that winning most away games is pretty impressive, and that largely, on any given day, anyone can beat anyone.
Yeah, we're not in a Big Six era anymore, we're in a Big 19. And Wolves...
That's so mean. That's really mean. Not least because Wolves are physically probably the biggest team.
By the way, when Wolves have the greatest back half of a season ever, thumping Everton along the way, please pull that clip out and stick it right down my throat. By the way, you talk about entertainment. Early on in Men in Blazers, kind of prehistory, we had an incredible listener who was dabbling in tech, in kind of early primitive AI. And he'd do for us a weekly mood table in which he kind of analysed, don't know how he did it, but like scraped, I guess you call it now, fan sentiment on Twitter and produced a weekly table, not based on points, but on vibes.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it was amazing. So Tottenham are in fourth place right now, but they've had two kind of late draws that they've grassed out the fans a little concerned. So right now they probably come in like in the mood table, in mid-table. Liverpool are top. But the vibes after what happened at the weekend probably would have their fans a little concerned. Palace fans, Sunderland fans vying in the vibes table for the top. It didn't work at the time because the product, the AI was still quite... Those were glorious days when AI was still primitive. But I still love the idea, Raw, capturing the roller coaster of emotions, the psychology of being a fan. As I said up top, only stats I believe that matters are X-joy, X-agony, X-depression. It's the emotion of fandom that makes us feel alive.
Yeah, and as you say, it often isn't related to the league table necessarily. It may be related to whether you're going up or down at any given time. That's probably relevant. But there won't be many happier fan bases out there than Sunderland or Palace, and there won't be many more worried, more fretful fan bases than, say, Forest. And the league table doesn't necessarily reflect that.
God bless. Let us dive into the truce of the weekend, also the non-truce. We'll revel in it all, but let's start with a toast. I want to raise my third first Michelob Ultra of the day to Harry Kane. Remember him, he scored twice in Bayern Munich's win over Werder Bremen on Friday, became the fastest player this century to reach 100 goals for a club playing one of Europe's top 5 leagues, which is incredible. To put that in context, previous record, 105 games, was set by one Cristiano Ronaldo for Real Madrid in 2011. I think it was matched by a Manchester City striker, you may have heard of him, Erling Haaland last season. We put both of those men on dioceses. We revere them, quite rightly. But I've got to say, when it comes to Harry Kane, all we seem to do is kind of undermine him. Perhaps because he doesn't have the charisma, the aura of, say a Jude Bellingham. But when you look at his records, Raw, they are Scintillating, reached 70 Bundesliga goals in just 67 games, faster than anyone else in the league's history. Broke the record for most goals scored in 50 Bundesliga games, 54 strikes, fewest number of games needed to reach 50 goals in the German top flight, 43 matches. Kane, highest scoring Englishman in Champions League history, England's top ever goal scorer. I could go on, but is this a case of a man who will only get his due when he retires, Raw? And I bet you when he retires and hangs up his boots, he'll still get somehow 20 goals a season.
Yeah, that would be my guess, Roger. I suspect what we're in store for when Harry Kane does retire, which we should point out is not imminent. You know, there's no reason to believe that's coming anytime soon. Is we will get loads of kind of pieces and documentaries and podcasts, whatever it might be, loads of content about how we always underestimated Harry Kane, that we took him for granted. I think that's definitely true. I do wonder to what extent the fact that he's still overlooked a little bit, which is an odd thing to say about someone who's been an elite footballer for nearly 20 years and is captain of England. Is because he's doing it in the Bundesliga. He's a player who left. You know, Haaland sets his mark in the Premier League, which is what we judge everything by. Ronaldo is different because he was a Premier League star who went abroad and conquered the world. Harry Kane, it feels a bit like, certainly here, he kind of took a step down because he couldn't win the Premier League, which is not a view I share, but I suspect that is the thing that kind of influences how he's perceived. We know he's doing really well at Bayern Munich, but we can kind of say to ourselves, well, it's only Bayern Munich, it's the Bundesliga, it's fine. It's not legitimate, but it is how maybe quite a lot of fans think.
It's something more profound though, Raw. It's so much more. I've just finished a book this weekend about the World Cup, and I relived the 2022 World Cup in the final chapter. And you and I had a conversation after the France game where he equalled the all-time England national team scoring record. I think it was 53 goals, but he also blew that penalty over the bar in agonising defeat. I think we talked about at the time how no one will remember the 53 goals. They'll all talk about the one that he missed. And there's something profoundly English to the core about how we approach Harry Kane and his achievements. We're very uncomfortable with achievements as English human beings. We will talk more about a lot of English human beings because we are going to dive into the Premier League. Quick plug for one of our other platforms, the Women's Game, which has just launched 2 enormous new shows this week. New signing, Christy Mewis joins her sister Sam in Mewis Squared. That absolute legend of women's soccer, Becky Sauerbrunn, has just joined us full-time to drop the debut episode of a new show, Team Me Up, where she'll take us deeper into the game with so many guests talking about their footballing journeys. First up, actress, Cocaine Bear, visionary, NWSL co-owner, the quite incredible Elizabeth Banks. Find this, all episodes of both shows on our Women's Game channels, linked in the show notes below. Let's get, though, to the football. Let's start with the big one. Probably has never been a better time to be a Crystal Palace fan than right now, this very second. They were founded in 1861. We're living in incredible days. Crystal Palace 2, Liverpool 1. What is this Palace twisted, as Louis van Gaal would say? 17 games undefeated coming into this, longest run in history, 2 goals conceded, incredible narrative drama. Football almost is a daytime soap opera, really. We had the spectacle of Alexander Isak making his first ever Liverpool Premier League start and being marked by who? Mark Gahey, who was an inch away from joining Liverpool himself on deadline day, and by an inch, I mean a gym class booked by Palace's chairman, which meant he conveniently didn't have his phone on him to okay the move. Raw, I was just so excited to see what would happen if Gahey scored. Would he celebrate against his future team, Raw? Is there an unwritten footballer's rule on that?
It's an awkward one, isn't it? Because I think we're moving through the era, past the era of the no celebrating against your former team. There were examples this weekend, Rog, where players celebrated against their former employers, but we've not yet crossed that Rubicon of like what happens against the team that you will probably sign for next summer. My guess is
he would have done that.
Yeah, you kind of adopt a celebration. I've got quite a lot of thoughts on celebrations this weekend, but you adopt a celebration that's slightly more low-key without being obviously, I don't want to upset anybody on the opposite team.
Yeah, I mean, I really spent a lot of time thinking about this in a runner. I wondered whether, if he scored an own goal, whether he'd like rip his shirt off and run around like a madman. It is so mind-bending football at the moment. But in the actual game, not in the theoretical mind of me thinking about the game, Liverpool opened up, honestly set to purr at the beginning. Palace content to palace it up, do what they say on the tin, let Liverpool onto them, and break just electrifyingly. And just because you know what your Palace are going to do doesn't mean you can stop it. Palace broke, won a corner, which to be fair was actually a goal kick, ... But then, well, Liverpool, if you actually look at it, they all went to mark Chris Richards, Birmingham, Alabama's finest. 3 or 4 defenders ran near post with him, chaos everywhere. Ryan Gravenberch under pressure, nodded it into the Kenny Loggins danger zone, and Ismail Assar stabbed home his 50th Premier League goal. And it does feel like about 48 or 49 of them have been against Liverpool Raw. First time Liverpool have been behind all season. How'd you like them apples?
I'm actually going to farm this bit of the podcast out to an AI version of Rory Smith Rog because I don't want to do it. Ismail Assar really hates Liverpool.
Can you send me a vibes table while you're doing it?
Do your vibes table. No, it's a very primitive AI. That's all you need. He really hates Liverpool. Loves scoring against Liverpool. Does not like the club. Don't know what Liverpool have done to him, to be perfectly honest. But he does seem to enjoy it. I think at this stage, Liverpool were probably not looking forward to seeing Crystal Palace again. They do kind of seem to have their number. Palace have that same little hoodoo over Aston Villa at the moment as well. There's just something about Palace that seems to bring out the worst in Liverpool.
Yeah, and Liverpool were rattled. 4 defeats in 43 Premier League games for Arne Slot before this one. And it was fascinating to watch. Vert struggling to keep up with the pace. Salah, quiet again, a big day for Alexander Isak. As I said, starting his first Premier League match in Liverpool colours. 3 shots off target, 2 big chances missed, 0 goals or assists. Not an easy game to judge him on Raw against the Palace defensive system. But what did you make of that shiny new work in progress in terms of kind of the greater slot system in wholesale transformation?
I think that they're caught in a trap that a lot of teams fall into. Isak, it's too early. He's not close to fully fit, and they're going to have to get him up to speed over the course of the season, which isn't ideal. But it looks to me like they are trying to become something new, which is admirable and fine and what Slot wants to do in the long term. But there's always that awkward period where if the thing you're trying to be doesn't work, part of you is thinking, should we just be what we used to be? Should we just do the stuff that we know works? You saw it a little bit in the Merseyside derby actually last week, where Slot clearly decided the 4-2-3-1 wasn't really functioning against Everton, so he just went back to 4-3-3, which was the system they played last season. The system Liverpool have played for 10 years, to be perfectly honest. And it's the same here. They feel a bit like a team that wants to be something else, but to take that final step to transform is quite difficult. And at the same time, you're trying to bed in all of these new signings. You're trying to change the balance of the side. There are lots of kind of little gaps in Liverpool. It's not a coherent whole yet. That's the impression I've had all season, and it's what they really looked like, especially in that first half at Selhurst Park.
Don't we all want to be something else, Raw? In a way, aren't we all Liverpool at the moment? But Palace are Palace, and this is what was so crazy about the game to me. They played, kinetic, kind of mind-melding, counter-attacking, Oliver Glasner masterclass football. System is so well drilled into these players, so deeply. The press triggered when to go. The counter the same. I mean, it was singeing stuff to witness. But as I said earlier, they did exactly what it says on the tin. They could have had 3 or 4. Alisson was making blocks like Dikembe Mutombo. 3 immense saves within 23 minutes. First from Pino getting down to parry at the post was astonishing, but there were so many of them, it kind of got lost in the glut. God bless Alisson, his positioning, his courage. I mean, I said it before, his strong wrists of a young owner, amazing.
Yeah, he produced, I'd say, 3 top-class saves that prevent Liverpool going into half-time, not just being beaten, the game basically over, but being humiliated.
Walloped.
Yeah, being genuinely thrashed. But the contrast to Alisson was the performance mainly on Saturday of Ibrahima Konate, and that's the other thing that's affected Liverpool this season, is that individually they seem very certain players seem very shaky. Alexis McAllister looks like a shadow of himself. And so what you end up with is this disjointed performance, this team that doesn't quite know where it wants to be or what it wants to be, with individuals suffering and the goalkeeper having to bail them out. But that said, Rog, I would just make one quick point. It's not cheating to have a good goalkeeper. Like, it's allowed. That's why you have a goalkeeper. It's why Liverpool paid that much money for Alisson, so that when they don't play very well, he gets them out of trouble. That is, to quote Roy Keane, kind of his job.
I know what it's like to have an astonishing goalkeeper. We also have one who's astonishing, but also does the memes, the jokes, the bants. amazing. It did feel as if Palace entered the dangerous territory of ruining not taking many of these chances. There were some moves that were utterly stunning. There was a move that ended in a Mateta shot that just crashed off the bar, which was truly one of the greatest moves of a weekend pat with them. But then Henderson was strong in the face of a close-range flick from Wirtz. Isak danced through, but lashed wide. But then Chiesa came on. And 87th minute, ball played in from Frimpong. Salah's arm up, confused poor Chris Richards, who stooped to head it only to that little Care Bear of Italian joy. Scuffed his shot, actually, but sometimes you hit it imperfectly and it utterly fools the keeper. And poor Henderson, who played out of his socks too, was stranded. Ball bounced up and in. Only surprise to me was that Chiesa didn't score again in the 94th minute, Raw. But in that moment, did you think, God, we are doing it again?
To be honest, my main reaction was kind of Liverpool just about deserved that on the balance of the second half. That they got away with it completely in the first half, but in that second half they did create a lot of chances. They penned Palace right back. If you look at the XG, it was they did to Palace in the second half what Palace had done to them in the first half. But then my type of fandom, Rog, is not sort of positive. It's not sunny side fandom. My sense is always if you're scoring late goals, then something is going wrong, and you are kind of dancing with the devil a little bit, because at some point you might get hoisted by your own petard. And I'm only thankful, Rog, that the game finished on 90 minutes and it didn't happen on Saturday. What's up next? What are we talking about next?
Did you turn your TV off and just be like, oh, well.
That'll do. That point will do.
I'll take your point. I love it. By the way, I always feel like when Everton get themselves back into a game and it's 1-1, I get greedy. And I'm like, we're going to win this. And then actually we get beat. And I always regret the feeling. I would have taken a tie. That is not really a Liverpool fan feeling, because the biggest shock perhaps of the season so far, there was a late goal in this game. There were mentality monsters, but it was not Liverpool. Instead, ecstatic 97th minute, Eddie Nketiah, substitute, kid who joined the Arsenal Academy age 14, used the skills that he'd forged at Hale End to chest the ball down exquisitely and finish ruthlessly, reeling away, just empathetically connecting both to the fans and no doubt to Arsenal Nation in that moment. That was probably one of the biggest goals he's ever scored for Arsenal Football Club, to deliver first home win for Palace against Liverpool in 11 long years, run now of 18 games undefeated, club record. Palace are your Premier League's last undefeated team, Raw. Oliver Glasner, football genius. And football's amazing.
The job he's done at Palace is extraordinary. The fact that they're 18 unbeaten had kind of caught me by surprise, because obviously they were one of the feel-good stories at the tail end of last season, but that was to do with the FA Cup. You weren't really paying attention to their lead form, because by that stage, they were safe, they weren't going to get into Europe. It was kind of immaterial. They were playing to an extent to get to the cup final. And then they start this season so well. In the context of losing Eberechi Eze really late, the doubts over Mark Gay right until the last hour of the transfer window, they're having to kind of retool their squad on the fly, not knowing quite what it's going to look like in terms of whether two of their major players are going to be there. That was already on the back of losing Michael Olise to Bayern Munich last summer. The fact that Glasner has managed to kind of keep crafting this team into this incredibly well-oiled unit is a genuinely astonishing achievement. When they appointed Glasner, his record in Germany was good, but it wasn't kind of eye-catchingly good. He'd done well at Eintracht Frankfurt, but he'd had ups and downs at Wolfsburg and stuff, and it looked like a kind of middle-of-the-road appointment. But I think what it shows is just that if you get the right manager at the right club with the right group of players, really special things happen. Because, they're third in the Premier League. And again, caveat, asterisk, we're only 6 games in, it's dead early, not, realise all that stuff. But given the summer he had, for them to have started this well is jaw-dropping.
It is amazing. You talk about middle-of-the-road kind of manager. Palace were the ultimate, aspirationally, middle-of-the-road club. I'm old enough to remember when Roy Hodgson was at 2023. That quote, the fans have been spoilt here in recent times. When he talked to... essentially, he was like, we're mid-table. This is what we do. You shouldn't aspire to more. Scraping for survival was meant to be their lot. As you say, they're now third place with Czech's notes Everton Football Club next. It is amazing. Oliver Glasner's built an incredible culture. They're not a Brentford, they're not a Brighton, they're not a Bournemouth, like systems clubs with brilliant recruitment. There is just something truly And as you say, they had players prized away, and it wasn't clear. That's why Gahey ultimately was forced to stay. Oliver Glasner was seething. I mean, this is not planful stuff, but it is utterly, utterly magnificent. Very quickly, can they keep it up playing in Europe now with games twice a week, about to enter that routine, currently in third? Is this the Crystal Palace title push season?
I wish it was, Rog. And even as a defeated fan, I find it really hard to begrudge them that victory, not least as I think they deserved it on the day. Liverpool improving in the second half notwithstanding. But the way the club is run, the fact that it is, like you say, a really human kind of triumph. It's not kind of machines and data and this is our clever little trick that we do. It's just that they've got a great manager. They've got some really good characters in the dressing room. Gay being prime amongst them, being able to kind of put that move that he wanted desperately behind him to kick on is extraordinary. Testament to Glasner. It's going to be a real shame when he takes the Manchester United job. We don't have to.
What system does he play again, Ro? Is it
three at the back, Rog? It's three at the back, and he's quite good at it. But the really encouraging thing, the really important lesson, the parable of Crystal Palace, Rog, is that they were for a long time this kind of byword for why you shouldn't dream, because they'd moved away early in their Premier League tenure from having sort of wizened, grizzled British managers, and they'd appointed a guy called Frank de Boer, who was an Ajax legend, this sort of sophisticated continental. I don't want to speak about Britain too badly, Roger, but we don't like sophisticated continentals anymore. We don't trust them. We're not really in that stage of our development. And Palace appointed de Boer, and it went horribly wrong. They didn't win for 7 games. He got sacked, and for years and years and years, it was don't be like Palace. Stick with what you know. Stay in your lane. Don't have any ambition. And in appointing Glasner, Palace broke with that. Just to be honest, it had defined the club for a long time. They had been managed by Sam Allardyce and Tony Pulis and Roy Hodgson. They wanted experience. They wanted people who were safe pairs of hands. And they went and got Glasner. And it felt like a risk because Palace were doing the De Boer thing again. And it's worked so brilliantly that, to be honest, it should be an advert to every other team in that position, every other club that feels a bit like a middle-of-the-road Premier League mainstay type club. Roll the dice. Trust yourself to get it right. Trust your gut and trust your judgment. Because, I don't think Palace can win the league. I don't think they'll sustain the title challenge, if I'm completely honest. But they can probably get into the Champions League just because the Premier League is so balanced and they have so much talent. And they also have this unity of purpose, and that tends to be quite important.
God, Palace in the Champions League. That is the stuff. I hate the Super League, but that would be the proper Super League. That would be a really Super League. Make it happen. I made a film about Palace in 2015, back when Alan Pardew briefly, fleetingly had them dreaming. They signed Johan Kabay. PSG caliber player arriving at Palace, and they were really dreaming. It obviously crashed and burnt for both Kabay and ultimately after flickering with wonder and Pardew. But that place, South London, that fan base, the core of that team who really appreciate this, an incredible symbiosis, an incredible authentic locality. I hope they dream, and I hope they make those dreams real, more than I could ever say. Magnificent weekend, savour this season, Palace fans. I say as a neutral, it was magnificent to watch. It is magnificent to watch. And Liverpool, their serve finally broken. Could Arsenal capitalise? Well, yes, they could. Newcastle 1, Arsenal 2. After that trademark sleeper agent Nketiah did the business, Arsenal then had to, go to their dread place, St James's Park, a place that has really been their own hellish torment of late. Lost 3, I think, of the last 4 there. League Cup semi-final, lost 2. Tune in their heads, as you have to say. Joe Linton, Guimaraes seem somehow to have magical cloaks of invisibility protection when they're playing Arsenal, in which they never ever get booked. But the game within the game, Raw, was really, for me, the extent to which, Mikel Arteta's taken a lot of crap since the Manchester City game. And I wondered how much would he internalise that criticism? After the Liverpool loss, the Manchester City late draw, conservative, risk-averse, caution. He inserted Eze here in the number 10 alongside Basaka Baka. And it was magnificent to watch. I will say in the opening exchange, I spent time with Bukayo Saka last week, and he talked about just how much he loves to play with Eze, just like their London roots coming through. He's like, Both of us grew up playing like street ball, and you saw it. Eze, delicious flick and drive, wondrously saved by Pope. Then an Arsenal penalty given, then VAR'd off after Pope had taken down Gyökeres. Got the slice of the touch on the ball, so it was reversed. That turned St James's Park into almost cauldron settings, Raw. But it was overall a bright, positive, ambitious, let history remember, Raw, opening gambit for Mikel Arteta with his non-finishing starters.
Yeah, I wonder whether he has recognised, not more than the criticism he got for the City game, but he's recognised that Newcastle aren't a team that can be bullied. Of all the teams in the Premier League, Newcastle are probably the most resistant to Arsenal's physicality, and I don't say that in a critical way in the slightest. Arsenal are a big, imposing team, but Newcastle are bigger. It's a land of giants at St James's Park. And I wonder whether Arteta recognised that in that game, where your physical kind of force can't be the edge, then you need a little bit of invention to break Newcastle down. And in that first half, I thought Arsenal did that really, really well. They looked bright and inventive and creative. And that is Newcastle's weak spot, as it is quite a lot of teams' weak spots, to be honest, rather than that kind of physical sort of rolling over teams that Arsenal tend to do.
I mean, it was dance kind of stuff in the early exchanges. Saka initiated a flowing move, saw Trossard thrash one off the bar. Eze, another mid-range lash, well parried by Pope again. Felt like one-way traffic for a while until Mosquera mishit a clearance, span backwards, agonisingly out for a corner, kind of Chekhov's gun style. Newcastle played it in, and your new favourite cult hero, 6'6", Nick Voltemada, rose up, gave Gabriel the slightest of touches, which Gabriel then treated as if he'd been hit in the back of the head with a Louisville slugger. Voltemada, delicious neck strength, it has to be said, to flick that ball home like some kind of German Yao Ming. It was gobsmacking, Raw, to see him in that second. I am here, I am your new cult hero. He looks like an enormous Victorian statue has been ripped from its base, had a fairly dodgy footballer haircut slapped on and then sent out onto the field. But God bless Gabriel. Man who was pushed in the back 2023 when Newcastle's goal against the Gunners probably should have been disallowed. Here, though, he just felt gravity more than normal human beings, Raw. Watching Arsenal complain about physicality on a corner, I think Alanis Morissette invented the word ironic just for that situation.
Yeah, I don't want to sound bitter, and I'm conscious that I am exposing myself to that risk. But watching Arsenal, they do complain quite a lot, and obviously most teams in the Premier League complain. Most teams are bad losers, for example. That I don't think that's a criticism that anyone in football should ever level at anybody else, because they're all bad losers. But Arsenal do complain a lot, and part of me wonders whether they need to kind of rein that in for their own benefit as much as anything else.
I want to talk to you about this really, 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 because I feel the same. Like there is a sense of it. You saw immediately Gabriel reacted by giving Voltemada really just a quick little elbow of revenge in, I will say, not the most impressive of ways. And God bless the German, tried to give him a Bremen wedgie right back. Stadium was just, it was like a rocking, don't come a knocking. I mean, tune up the physicality. You wondered how Arsenal would respond. Watching him in the exchanges, I wrote in my notes, just an emotionalism. It's a truth for Arsenal. Arsenal fans don't love to hear it. Just a lack of composure in the minutes after that goal. And it starts with, and I love this man, it starts with Mikel Arteta. His reaction is to just become more and more frantic on the sideline. I think back to Dominic Szoboszlai last season. I asked him, what do you see when you look at Arne Slot and he's just standing there stoically on the sideline? And he came out with a great line. He said, I see a man with a plan, and that plan is working. Arteta's the complete opposite. He kind of acts out every single move from the Talking Heads Stop Making Sense concert on the sideline. Just the ongoing narrative about Arsenal. Are they too emotional? You watch how they dealt with conceding that 10 minutes afterwards, Roy. It was mostly about wallowing in their own sense of injustice and pity.
Yeah, they feel like a team who believe that the world is kind of arranged against them in a way that I think is not true. Like, it fundamentally isn't true. And obviously, in this instance, either they managed to put that out of their minds or they managed to channel it into something positive. But I think over the course of the last 3 seasons, that hasn't been the case. And it's still the one kind of question mark I have with Arsenal is we know they have the deepest squad in the Premier League. We know that they have the best defence in the country, probably the best defence in Europe, as Pep Guardiola said. You know they have goals, they have creativity, they have physicality. They are, I think, the best example of kind of this iteration of the Premier League. They are this Premier League, the way the Premier League has gone, what it has become. Arsenal are its final form. But the thing that will scupper them is could scupper them, is kind of their reaction to adversity. Does it still to complain? It's to surround the referee, to point fingers, to look a little bit like they're whining, to be honest. And as you say, like if Gabriel makes a slightly better connection, he probably gets sent off, and we are not having this conversation.
God, I mean, you've nailed it. That squad, that was the central question in that second half. The squad, the options. I mean, so many options, so many combinations, so many possibilities in that. Almost too many options. It's a new challenge for Arteta, working out the instruction manual about how to, does he stick? Does he twist, starter, finisher wise? Because he knew from that point on, Newcastle, who are formidable, is it 4 clean sheets going into this one out of 5 games? He knew they were going to go Citadel down. He knew Arsenal have struggled to score there forever. He knew Gyökeres was unable to win a duel for long spells against those giant Toon centre-backs. I think Timber had a close range header snuffed out by Pope in the second half. Gabriel Martinelli and Mikel Merino were flung on to replace Bukayo and Calafiori. Ødegaard came on. But the best chances still kept falling to Newcastle on the break. Started to feel like the game was seeping away from Newcastle. Then in the 84th minute, Rice took a short corner on the left, returned, arced in a wicked cross with whip. And Mikel Merino, like a man in a rom-com, the love of your life, he was right there all this time. The number 9 you cried out for. Just leapt up, flicked a quite artful header, disguised it really past the stunned Nick Pope. And breathe, Arsenal fans. Former Newcastle player too. Celebrated, of course he did. Mikel Merino's your real one. Arteta's finishers, strike again, ... If only his starters could do likewise. In the Men in Blazers Discord, Buster for Joe Star wrote, I've spent about 80 minutes thinking what a stupid sport this is and why am I even watching it? And then he came back after the Merino goal, all capping, this is why I watch. And I love that, Buster, for it's the essence of football and life. But there was more to come, Raw. We got to touch very quickly. We've got to touch late on that Gabriel handball off Elanga. There was also, I think, Matty Cash in the Aston Villa game not given. Raw, quickly, are we at a point here, handball, a law that is now so opaque, so open to such vastly different interpretations by both pundits, but more importantly by referees? Is it purely discretionary? Because it does seem to be based on such inputs as vibes and mood. I
think a lot of it is vibes. Does it have the handball-y vibe? That seems to be what they're going for. Yeah, so apparently the one with Elanga is because it deflected off his body. I didn't know that was part of the rules. They just seem to be adding extra bits to these things. But increasingly, Rog, and handball's, you're right, handball's always been the kind of the pioneering rule here. Increasingly, I don't know about a lot of the rules because you see shirt pulls not given that look blatant, and then in another game on the same weekend, you'll see a shirt pull given that looks less blatant. I have no idea what the rules are. I have no idea what the kind of bar is for re-refereeing things. I know that they are re-refereeing things. They are looking... The Arsenal penalty was actually quite a good example of it, or the Arsenal penalty that wasn't given. The whole thing is completely opaque to me now. I think that and I think increasingly, I think it's a much more serious issue than we think it is. It's much more serious than should Newcastle have had a penalty. It's can the fans trust what's going on the pitch? Because I think increasingly people feel like they can't.
Oh my God, you just sent a chill through me. I mean, you're talking about democracy ending within football.
Weirdly, I think I'm talking about tyranny ending in football. I think that, I mean, maybe it's the stage where we vote on whether stuff's a handball. Maybe that's what.
Oh my God, that would be genuinely amazing.
To be honest, it'd be better. It would be better if you could vote on whether it feels like a handball.
By the way, if it works for Love Island, why not import that great idea, Premier League? Make it. We need vibe tables instead of the league table. We need to vote on handballs. I think we've just fixed football rule. I mean, I will say, in the moment, I was like, the point is good for Arsenal, even though I'll be honest, also, I was dreading the whole week narrative where everyone piles onto Arteta, dropping points early. Is there title charge over? But not so fast. at the death, 96th minute, Nick Pope, who'd been such a hero throughout this game, muffed the kick, which led to Arsenal winning another, oh my God, dread corner. Ødegaard, God bless him, caressed an in-swinger. Saliba blocked out Nick Pope, a bit like Charles Barkley. And Gabriel, had to be him, right? Premier League writers were on one this weekend. Gabriel Lahil, remember him from the first half? Became the exclamation point hero at the end. Pounded that ball home. Celebrated in front of the Newcastle fans. As they always say in life, he who corners last, corners longest. Whatever that phrase is, Raw. 36 goals from corners for Arsenal since 2023-24. 15 more than any other side. Arsenal without corners. I like the idea of me with hair. It's just like inconceivable. But back to Arsenal, Raw. Mikel Arteta said his team had shown the Premier League who we are. Do you believe in statement wins, Raw? Is that a thing?
No, I need to... It's difficult because this is... I wish I could farm this one out to AI as well, because it's hard for me to separate, or to be certain that I'm separating my fan self from my rational being self.
Like Severance.
But yeah, exactly.
You're innie and you're outie.
This is my innie, or possibly I can't remember. This is what, yeah, the one that makes sense.
My innie and my outie are both the same, by the way. But go on.
I think mine might be too. It did feel like a big vibe shift this weekend. Like the combination of the two late goals. Obviously, Liverpool is still top. They will probably be no more than a point off the top going into the international break, which is a perfectly good turnaround for Liverpool. Not a problem. But it did feel as though that kind of aura they'd started to build up of things kind of fall in their favour. They always find a way. That has evaporated at the same time as Arsenal have suddenly discovered this kind of, we'll fight to the end mentality type thing as well.
Mentality monsters.
So there has been an unquestionable vibe shift. How important that is, we don't know. Does it 6 games in and it's still September, Rog? But if I was to have one little quibble, it's that I'm pretty sure over the last 3 years there have been lots of statement wins from Arsenal, results that have been held up as this is proof that they are ready. They can do it now. You think back to Ødegaard with the camera after beating Liverpool, the win against Manchester City, the win against Manchester United, I think, at the Emirates at one point. There have been all these various results where you think, okay, this is Arsenal, they will now kick on, they are ready. And it doesn't work like that because they have to play football again next week. The statement win is not worth any more points than the normal win. So they've got West Ham at home next week. I am 99% certain they will win that. But they haven't yet proven, and it's a little bit unfair to judge Arteta like this, they haven't yet proven that these statement wins have any long-term meaning. That's the problem.
And we've seen them make statement wins and then get smacked by West Ham. I mean, that, again, sends chill. Those are the games that do Arsenal in. I hope that is not the case. I do want to say spare a thought for Newcastle. Twice this season they've welcomed title challenges, made them suffer and experience defeat at the very last second. Spare a thought too for Nick Pope, who was scintillating throughout and then at the end fumbled the bag. But Arsenal, tenacious on this day. The fans did live every single emotion. I do think Mikel Arteta will really draw so much from this comeback win. 2 points the gap, scenes at the end, Arsenal going berserk, Arteta delirious, players joyful. I know the celebration police will be out raw, and we'll talk more about that in just one moment, but I do understand it. St James's Park has been a human agony. They were looking into the abyss here. They proved themselves to themselves, really knocked back their critics. And I think we'll draw the most important thing, that is the most precious currency in football that they'll take from this, which is belief. Godspeed. Brentford 3, talking about belief. Manchester United 1 in the Christian Eriksen derby. United had the chance to do something really important, which is try to win back-to-back Premier League games for the first time in the Reuben Amorim era. Holy crap, that is incredible in its own right. And to do that, after that mud fight victory against 10-men Chelsea last week, the tactical autocrat had to visit the scene of many a crime. Brentford's G-Tech. I think twice in the last 3 visits, United had somehow conceded 4 goals. Place where Mbumo returned after moving to the Bees for $95 million club record over the summer. His every touch was booed. as if he was some kind of Brentford Benedict Arnold. Brentford really were ready for this. Who needs a Wisa? Who needs an Mbeumo? Who needs even a Norgard? They knew United would do their confident opening, then falling apart thing. And in the 9th minute, Cunha dispossessed, lay on the floor as the ball was thumped down the field quite brilliantly by Jordan Henderson. Yes, him. Igor Thiago, left alone on the halfway line with Harry Maguire, who did as James in the Discord channel described as the best cha-cha slide offside trap, one hop this time, that the world has ever seen. Igor ran on, Bayindir frozen on the line as the Brazilian thumped past him. Bayindir, let the history say, had 2 fine saves inside 60 seconds right after that to keep his team in it. But then on 20 minutes again, Igor Thiago slapping home through an already exhausted keeper. By the way, Thiago, young man, made a club record signing last season. I think he was out for almost the entire season with a almost instant meniscus tear. So happy for him. But Raw, Brentford had already dropped 8 points from winning positions this season. Do you think, was it actually United's plan to cede the lead? Crazy like a fox style?
That would suggest that this whole United collapse is part of some sort of long-term aim, so that kind of in 2068, when they win the league again, we're going to look back and say, well, actually, that whole thing was so they could build to this one championship. No, I don't think so. I think Manchester United are just not that good.
Yeah, proof of that. And another incredible these United stats are shocking. Not won on the road in 7 games dating back to March. That's incredible. United have not won on the road since March. I mean, mind-blowing. They did get themselves back into it through the most unexpected of sources. Benjamin Sesko. Dorgo kept the ball and looped at a cross goal. Poor Sesko needed 3 attempts to smash it at Kelleher. Who, when his shoot was like watching a pickleball rally before Sesko somehow smashed home his first ever United goal. 7th game for the club. I've got to ask you the obvious theological question quickly, Raw. When Sesko scores, is that an official sign of the apocalypse, the end of days?
I felt more relief for him than anything, to be honest.
You didn't feel like we were all marching to the Valley of Death?
No, I mean, I feel like that generally, but no, I think if you look around the world, there's quite a lot of evidence for it, Rog. But no, I think for Sesko, there will be so much pressure on him. He'll be under such strain to score that just seeing him get one felt like a relief for all concerned.
Yeah, I mean, and almost 45 minutes ensued for United to try and prove themselves to themselves. I mean, honestly, they look like they lacked pretty well all the rudimentary skills of any cohesive tracking, making runs, feeling motivated. Midfield lacked complete control. Cunha, $84 million, contributing so little. I will say, listening to the Manchester United fans singing their old Fergie chant, attack, attack, attack. With this team, it's like watching someone play the Baywatch theme over footage of David Hasselhoff dropping that cheeseburger on the floor and just drunkenly fumbling after it. It is hard. The juxtaposition makes my heart ache. In truth, sloppy football, sloppy as hell from both sides. This was an eyesore. United did create the chance they needed to get back into it. Nathan Collins yanked back and Mbeumo, penalty given. VAR checked everything, offside, dogs out. Took forever. Brentford then threw on subs to ice the kicker. God bless. Bruno, that I know, in the old days used to be ice from the spot, but he missed at Fulham a month ago. Here, he trotted in. Kelleher stayed big till the shot came in pretty limply. Dove left, palmed it away. Bruno Raw. Gent was once one of the most steely penalty takers in the game. I think 62 penalties scored, 8 missed. A quarter of those 8 have been in the last month in London alone. Steve Thorne in our Discord wrote, we were told it's the referee's fault for bumping Bruno when he missed 2 weeks ago at Fulham. What then was this, Raw?
Well, partly it might have been a little bit of psychological warfare. Brentford, as you say, kind of taking their extra time to make sure that Bruno really felt the pressure build up. But to be honest, it was just quite a bad penalty, whatever the circumstances. If he'd gone for extra power because of the delay, because of the nerves that had set in or whatever, and put it too high or cracked it off the bar, then maybe you could understand. This was just a bad penalty, and it kind of summed up Manchester United's afternoon.
It did indeed. By the way, if United had scored there, you would have favoured them to win. Instead, a slop continued until Matthias Jensen finished deliriously in the 95th minute. It was like watching a nurse lance a really septic boil. Brentford beat Manchester United back-to-back for the first time since 1937. Reuben Amorim continues to break records, but not in a good way. Third time in 4 seasons United have been beaten at the bus stop in Hounslow, which is astonishing. Brentford fans will sleep all week hearing the delicious sounds of their Mbumo chant, Brian, what's the score? So let's talk about it. And I hate that we have to do this, Raw, but we are now officially in manager sacking season. Graham Potter had a 33% win percentage at West Ham. Gone. Amorim somehow at 27%, despite all that cash burned. He looks like the Walking Dead. He really does on that side. I spent much of the second half in his kind of signature agonised recovery position. 3 defeats from 6 league games now this season. Eric Ten Hag, let me remind you, fired after 4 losses in, was it 9 games last October? His record, Amorim 17 losses in 33 Premier League games. These are astonishing. 56 goals conceded. He's got Sunderland at home, Liverpool away to come. It feels to me that only kind of like stasis, inertia, and the fact that the board had just backed him so heavily over the summer is keeping him in the job. Is it the desire not to fire yet another manager that's keeping him a raw? Or how many games do you give him?
Well, it has to be at least partly that, doesn't it? That Ineos, Jim Ratcliffe, the kind of the minority owners who control Manchester United, they've put so many of their eggs into Reuben Amorim's basket that they cannot countenance the idea of kind of moving away from him. The players they signed in the summer, I don't think it's that relevant because I'm not sure that any of them are that well suited to Reuben Amorim's system, to be perfectly honest. I think Mbumo and Cunha and Šeško are all really good footballers, but I don't think they're kind of dependent on a 3-4-1-2 to thrive. I think they could all play in lots of different formations. Maybe Reuben Amorim should try it at some point. I don't know. But the main thing to me is that what's the point of Manchester United sacking Reuben Amorim? There is no point, because all that would happen is they would get somebody else in, Oliver Glasner, or Maurizio Pochettino, and he would be in exactly the same position. A squad that is not suited to the way that he plays, a club that doesn't have the patience to see that sort of rebuild through, because the expectations are so high. So they'd get a year, they'd get 18 months, and then it would all come round again. So in a way, as dreadful as Amorim's performances have been, as awful as results are, and given that there's part of me that thinks he's trying to get sacked.
Yes, he's quite quit. He is quite quit.
The number
Who
of times
does not want to be there?
Reuben Amorim, who I really like, part of the problem actually is that everyone seems to really like Reuben Amorim, that he comes across very well. He seems like an amicable, personable, really bright guy. It's slightly upsetting.
Soon kick that out of you.
He's younger than me, which I find very upsetting, Rog. But the number of times he seems to have kind of challenged United's hierarchy to get rid of him, they really should have picked up that hint. And part of me thinks, they don't want to sack him because they know there is no point going through all this again.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reports crackling out about how the players have tuned Amorim out, and normally you think that's the players' agents. I've got a feeling it's Amorim's people who are doing that briefing. I mean, the dude just seems so miserable. I do think he's quite quit in every regard. Next up, Sunderland at home for United. By the way, I did mention our Discord, the Men in Blazers Discord channel. Come and join us for the Champions League conversation this midweek. I did. There were thousands of comments over the past weekend of game. I'm in there along with you, reacting to the action, the wonder. I do love it so much. Feels like Twitter back before the bots stole that from us. So come and be with us. The link is in the chat. It's football as it's meant to be. Football with friends. And talking about friends, Manchester City 5. Oh, Burnley 1. 9th place, Manchester City coming in. A lot of talk about they had only 7 points in their first 5 games. And a lot of people pointing out that the only team that has had this few points at this stage of the season gone on to win the title was 92-93 United in the Premier League's inaugural season. But City are entering this kind stretch of games against, I think you call them the mid-majors, starting with newly promoted Scotty Parker's Burnley, team against who they'd won all previous 13 games by a combined score of 46-2. And I think those two were some kind of JJ Watt safety. Etihad welcome back City speed merchant Carl Walker. to the site of so many of his former glories. Really lovely to see an ovation from the home fans, who gave him a much kinder reception than Jeremy Doku did. Just ran at Walker on repeat, total carnage, starting in the 12th minute, drove at the back pedalling Kyle, didn't exactly beat him. But as the Belgians skipped past, the ball bobbled around, bounced in the ring of fire, that led to French defender Maxime Esteve putting it into his own net, 1-0 City. And as the Etihad serenaded Burnley with beautiful chance of you going down with United, we've got to credit Burnley. Scotty Parker sets him up to batten down the hatches, beat on the break. 38th minute, it did work. Ball broke to Jadon Anthony, smashing one in off Ruben Dias. God bless. And for all the talk about Haaland having scored 67% of City's goals coming into this game, this meant that Anthony had been involved in 5 of Burnley's 6 strikes. I think he scored 4, assisted in 1. Incredible season. Came through the Arsenal Youth Academy, didn't everybody, alongside Emile Smith-Rowe and I think Reece Nelson. Raw, is Jadon Anthony the best player no one's talking about right now?
He seems like the breakout star of this Burnley team. Absolutely. Whether he can sustain it is a different matter, but he's given them something. He's given them so it sounds really cheesy, but like something to believe in. There's a player there who's scoring goals, who's enjoying it in the Premier League, who is standing out. And for a team like Burnley in their situation, you need something like that to kind of haul you through. So as long as he maintains this form, all right, maybe not against Manchester City, but if he can maintain this form against some of the lesser lights of the Premier League, they stand a chance.
God, Jadon Anthony, it's almost like you ask for a footballer's name from a simulator. It's just like jamming like 97% of footballers are called either Jadon or Anthony. Run them both together, you get a star in the making. Second half of the game reverted to factory settings. City pretty well opened a can of whoop-ass. Haaland feasted, actually competing with Esteve, who scored another goal. Brace for him, another own goal. Confirmation own goal even has gone across the city from United to the other side of Manchester. But Haaland would not be outdone. Scored twice in stoppage time. Brought his tally to 8 on the season through just 6 games. 93 scored in 103 Premier League matches. Just astonishing. Brentford, Everton, Villa, Bournemouth ahead for City before that epic rumble against Liverpool on November the 9th. Haaland humming, Doku, form of his life. Raw, rumours of City's title chase demise, greatly exaggerated?
Yeah, I've had a little sense for the last couple of weeks that City might be building to something. I don't think they're perfect, and I think they'll continue to drop points, but they don't need to be perfect because the Premier League isn't like it was 5 years ago. You don't have to get 100 points. You don't have to get 99 points. You can win the league with 85, and I think City at the moment look capable of getting to that sort of level.
Monaco away in the Champions League. Pep travelling to the house that Flo Balogun built. I can't wait to watch that. And talking about the Champions League, we'll talk about this in one moment. Chelsea won. What? Brighton 3. A road well travelled, the pathway between Brighton and Chelsea, been walked by 15 players and coaching staff in the past couple of years. This was really Premier League football as a real housewives reunion. It was astonishing. Chelsea had, was it 6 former Brighton players in their squad, 4 in their starting 11, Caicedo, Pedro, Cucurella, and poor old Robert Sanchez. Somehow, still clearly not enough. Chelsea seemed to cruise, dominant, in control. Caicedo instrumental in the opening goal by Enzo, but early in the second half, Trevor Chalobah sent off for denial of a goal-scoring opportunity, and for the second straight week, Chelsea mistake led to a game-changing 10-man collapse. Brighton been so blunt until Fabian Hurtzler exhumed old man of the seas. Danny Welbeck moved Ruta a little deeper. 67th minute, Welbeck, who at 34, he's kind of like the Frank Gore of the Premier League, just an old man who keeps rumbling on, utterly overachieving in remarkable ways. Scored twice to propel a much needed Brighton comeback. First point away from home this season for them. But Raw, Chelsea, worrying signs. Now conceded, is it 11 goals in their last 5 games, all comps. Enzo Maresca, we talked about him in depth last week, his job security. That joy of Club World Cup victory long turned to ashes in his mouth. It's almost as if it's been airbrushed out of the happiness and memory banks he should have earned through the win. He said after the game, the message inside the dressing room is clear. Against any team in the Premier League, you can't continue to give away presents. But his team, winless in September, and it's kind of like self-constructed by the hand that he's been given. If you only play with young players, and that's the squad that's been assembled, you're kind of going to get these headless decisions on a regular basis. You think of veteran leadership, you don't see a lot there.
Yeah, it's the flaw in the model, I think, that if you look at most successful teams over the course of history, they have a blend of exciting young talent and, to be honest, a couple of maybe mid-career, good, solid pros, and then some veteran leaders who can guide everybody through. That is the mix that most teams want, and Chelsea have decided they don't want any of that. They just want sort of superstar teenagers. And it means that there are some incredibly exciting moments, but at the same time, yeah, when things get tough, as they tend to do in the Premier League, you might find that you suffer a little bit. I've got to admit, at Old Trafford last week, Rog, in the rain when United beat Chelsea all that time ago, it did feel a little bit like like if pressure is like a baton, it was being handed from Amorim to Maresca. It felt as Maresca kind of marched off the pitch, you thought, okay, this is going to be quite a rough winter for Enzo. This isn't a great sign. But the good news, Rog, is that they've got Arne Slot's frauds coming up next.
Arne Slot's frauds. I got to get that on a t-shirt, raw. Pronto. And by the way, well done Champions League script writers. Exactly what Maresca wants next. Who do they have midweek? New Benfica manager Jose Mourinho rolling into Chelsea on Tuesday. Oh my God, it'll be like the Dark Knight Returns. And talking about darkness and light, Tottenham won, Wolves won, sad Wolves, pointless and pointless, 5 league games, no wins, dragging their carcass to Tottenham. A Tottenham who stats geeks knew were oddly winless in the last 5 games against Wolves. Something had to give. And honestly, Spurs looked like they were going to be triumphant. They dominated the game, did not score, conceded to corner slot bundled in by Santiago Bueno. And I'm not a medical authority, so far be it from me to diagnose a case of Dr. Tottenham, but that's what it felt like. Probably, I wrote in my notes, could be Arsenal's best day of the year. Spurs toiled in that second half, had very little guile, very little creative quality, were very frustrated, no shots on target in the second half until your 94th minute. A Tel cross, batted back down Paulinho, the defensive midfielder who'd opened the scoring for Spurs midweek in the League Cup. It's contagious because here, he just instinctually opened up his body, caressed the ball home on the half volley with a touch of a tender lover. Gent ripped his shirt off, nipples out, just a relief of avoiding humiliation, getting to and out of the game. Second consecutive Premier League draw for Tottenham via a rescue mission. And, Raw, here I am, old enough to remember last week when the celebration police were out to mock Arsenal for celebrating a draw against Manchester City in remarkable ways. I will say, a lot of those were Tottenham fans, but the celebration police were notably quieter this week after this one. And I did appreciate this comment from GFOP at Talismo on our Instagram. He said, everyone's going to make fun of Tottenham celebrating a late equaliser against a team at the bottom, but you don't understand what it means to be a Tottenham fan. We're celebrating the fact we're actually able to do what we couldn't do last year, which is to see out games, to take a point from a game even if we weren't at our best. That's what is being celebrated. And Roy, I do love this, and I genuinely wonder, in our age of social media, when the pressure heaped on these players is 1,000 times worse than it ever was in the early 2000s when most of our current crop of pundits played, I guess I'm saying, is it time that we just give up on judging celebrations? Is it time we defund the celebration police?
Defund the celebration police, yeah.
Yes. Just let people have joy, man. I don't understand it.
I'm not even sure it's as like complex or subtle as the Discord comment makes it sound. João Palhinha scored a 94th minute goal. That's something to celebrate. If it gets you a point instead of losing a game, you celebrate. I don't see what the problem with it is. I do think there are times when it feels like teams can celebrate a bit too much, and you think actually there's a point where the players, not the fans, the players need to kind of rein it in just slightly, because otherwise it looks like you're kind of crowing, or you're kind of presenting it as being more meaningful than it might be. But there is absolutely no reason not to celebrate a 94th minute winner. And Rog, just to touch on what we talked about at the start, look at the players Spurs brought on. Matisse Tell, Wilson Odobert, 50 million quid's worth of Brennan Johnson, Pedro Porro, Pat Matassar. These are high-quality players coming off the bench. You're changing half your team in the last half an hour of a game. That's why you're getting late goals.
Yes, starters that are finishers are the starters. I don't even know who we are anymore. By the way, about the celebration place, who's got to the world is like in such chaos and human darkness. I don't even understand how anyone's got effort to be in the celebration place.
But it's because everyone's British now, Rog. That's what's happened.
Is that what it is? The world's now British.
Greatest cultural export is not allowing people to enjoy things. That is what we do. We've made everybody British. So as soon as anyone has fun...
Sit down!
Lots of other people say, well, you shouldn't be doing that. Which is the most British thing imaginable. It's a key part of the Premier League supporting experience. Getting upset that your rivals are having a nice time.
I do think if people were outraged by many things that are worthy of being outraged about, as opposed to, like, you know, Tottenham celebrations, I think that, you know, just be a very, very different world.
But like me and you don't need to be getting involved in the kind of let's keep things in perspective business, Rog, because that's not in either of our interests, is it? Yes, obviously, people should talk less about whether Tottenham should celebrate, like the precise level to which Spurs should celebrate a goal in the grand scheme of things is not important.
Table. Oh, we need a vibes table and we need it now. Aston Villa 3, Fulham 1, winless Aston Villa going into this, taking the season step by step, scored their first big boy goal of the season last week here. Oh, they came from behind to win. After Emi Buendia came on, start the second half, catalysed 2 goals deliciously, assisted 1, scored 1 within 2 minutes of each other. Villa scored 3 times off just 4 shots on target. And just as significantly, after Emery had called his players lazy last week, ended 3-goal droughts. McGuinness scored here for the first time in 2 years, was it? Buendia for 2.5. Watkins, most significant goal drought in 7 years, snapped. Fulham, 6 losses to Villa in a row, so at least they're consistent. Much needed first Villa League win of the season, out of the bottom 3. I want to quickly touch upon what's happened to Villa over the last 10 days behind the scenes, Raw, because the front office has been very King's Landing-y. A lot of intrigue. It's why we watch front office news. Amidst this free-fall start to the season, which has been astonishing to witness, Villa's vaunted, quite enigmatic president of football operations, Monchi, suddenly left. And we know him as Unai Emery's good friend, sidekick, a transfer genius, left, replaced by Robert Olabe, man who brought and sold Alexander Isak, a Real Sociedad. Also, I think signed Martin Odegaard on loan, oversaw Martin Zubamendi's career development. But that Monchi move was such a shock, Raw, kind of came out of nowhere after Villa's just debacle of a transfer window. They botched the Emi Martinez farewell. Goalkeeper said goodbye to the fans. Dude's still there. Then had to sell fan favourite and academy product Jacob Ramsey to kind of fend off profit and sustainably rules challenges. Almost gambled and failed. We talked about this last week to repeat their Champions League qualification. Missed out on goal difference. Quick blast rule. What do Villa Park's Kremlinologists say about Monchi's exit and the impact of a front office on a team's culture on the field?
Yeah, I think Monchi leaving is a bit of a blow. He was really fated when he was appointed. He's quite famous. We touched on this actually in the correspondent newsletter. He's quite famous for the work he did at Sevilla. He is one of maybe the first celebrity sporting director, I think. That's probably fair to say. He hadn't been able to replicate that at all at Villa. And I think what it indicates is probably, for all that Villa's public position is that the Premier League's financial rules are entirely to blame for everything that goes wrong. You know, if Villa concede from a corner, it's PSR. If Villa draw a game, it's PSR. Villa get knocked out in the Carabao Cup, PSR. I think it's a recognition that at least part of the issue, and Villa fans get quite angry if you say this, at least part of the issue is that the money they have been able to spend, they've not spent very well. That's why Villa have been kind of stalled in their progress. Monchi going, I think, is a recognition that he maybe wasn't working his magic at Aston Villa. Olabe doesn't have his reputation, but the work he's done at Sociedad is really solid. He clearly knows how to oversee the growth of a club. He will be a slightly more kind of low-profile presence, I think. But the other thing it illustrates is Emery's power, because it's another person that Unai Emery knows, another Basque. Can't have too many Basques these days, Rog. There's a book out this week by the journalist Guillaume Baladier called Rise of the Villains about Emery's time in Birmingham. And it's fascinating in lots of ways, but particularly about the way in which Aston Villa have basically handed the keys to the kingdom to Unai Emery. The club have basically decided at like an ownership level, either we succeed with Unai Emery or we just don't. Everything is built for him. Alabe's appointment, I think, cements that yet further.
God bless, what a time to bring out a book called Rise of Rise.
It's not a great publication date.
It's like the wedding videographer finally cutting your wedding video just after you got divorced. But Godspeed. Leeds 2, Bournemouth 2. Leeds learning the hard way that you got to close your games out, and it's costing them points. Let Fulham score, was it the 94th minute 2 weeks ago? Here they'd worked so hard to come from behind. Sure, Longstaff excellent, wilted in the 93rd minute. Substitute Ellie Krupi striking to silence Bear Pit Ellen Road, who'd taken proactive delight through the game to boo poor Tyler Adams. Knowing him, would have relished the chance to be the heel. Levelled every player he could to more boo. I think it was boo Ernsing, I think you call it. Raw, you were there to witness the heartbreak for Leeds fans. Where are you, very quickly? Are your cup half full on Leeds? Any points good? Are your cup filled with piss? 3 points dropped over the last 3 games? It's really a leading question for you, so we can enter the segment of the podcast we like to call Rory Smith Explains Yorkshire Mentality to the Outside World.
Is my cup half full or half empty of boiling piss? My cup is half full this week. I think Bournemouth are excellent. Bournemouth are also, I think, in the top 4 at the moment. They are probably one of the best run teams in the Premier League. They may well have the best coach in the Premier League. They're excellent to watch. They've kind of dealt with the sale of their entire defence incredibly well. I think getting a point against Bournemouth for a team that are newly promoted is probably quite a big achievement, as much as kind of the historic standings of the teams make that difficult to kind of get your head round as someone who's in their 40s. But Leeds were unlucky, and I think that's the bit that Daniel Farke and the players in particular will take from it. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, DCL Rog, played really well. Should have scored within the first 9 seconds. But they looked like they carried a threat. They created chances against Bournemouth. They looked like they could match them. And because it's Bournemouth, that's a good thing, because Bournemouth are excellent. So I think it's obviously frustrating to concede an equaliser in the 93rd minute, but it's not a bad point at all.
Very funny moment on that first Bournemouth goal I wanted to ask you about. Semenyo drove a free kick low under a jumping wall. Brendan Aronson was actually positioned as the draft excluder under it, and it rolled agonisingly past his little feet, I think. And I read one newspaper report that said there will be questions asked of Brendan Aronson's positioning. Dude was like lying on his tummy with his back to the ball. Raw, is it his fault? I mean, dude is just 5'7". Why are you putting him there? Or is that old football truth always, when in doubt, blame the American, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's Aronson's fault for not being tall enough.
Yes.
Is it Daniel Farke's fault for allowing him to be the draft excluder? Should he have nominated someone longer?
Yeah, exactly. That's my point, exactly. And by the way, it's not too late if you're watching, Brendan. Take some of those messy steroids, whatever he took when he was a teen at Barcelona, and you too, by the time you're about 28, could grow into like Nick Voltemade size.
Do you think that's his personal goal, to be the size of Nick Voltemade? Do you think he looks at Nick Voltemade and thinks, "Oh, I'd like to be 6'6"? How can I be 6'6"?
Yeah, most of us dream of being a professional footballer. Brendan Aronson has achieved that goal. Now his goal is renewed. It's to be Voltemade sized.
I've already achieved my dream of being a professional footballer. Now I need to achieve my other dream of being a tall professional footballer. Yeah.
We're all just chasing rainbows. Talking about chasing rainbows, oh, Big Ange Postecoglouites lament. Nottingham Forest 0, Sunderland 1. What a morality tale Forest are turning into. Still seeking their first win under Big Ange, who specialises in taking leads and letting them slip, but he saw he was seeing progress. It's so hard to do what he's trying to do. Take his buccaneering football style and weld it onto Nuno's reactive style with no pre-season. Man has had 4 road games. This was his first game back at home after 4 away, and the Forest faithful were blessed by being able to pay witness to, well, Sunderland scoring their first half goal this season. Aldertay off a set piece, finally choreographed to get him in behind and stooped to conquer. Second half, Forest battered Sunderland. The whole game really played in and around the Sunderland box. Postecoglou, post-game, rued his team's, quote, lack of ruthlessness. There was a moment near the end, Chris Wood had a close-range header that he normally would bury, but got his body shape all wrong. The cameras cut to a completely anguished manager. It was just like New Zealand violence on an Australian human being. 2 men bonded in agony. Raw, Ange struggling, his team looking more and more like Marinakis never read the fable about the goose that laid the golden egg, man.
It's not been a good start for Ange, and I think there's a little bit of fear settling in at the City ground, to be honest, that whatever magic Nuno had managed to kind of weave over that team and that club has just evaporated, and they look now like they're having to kind of scrap and claw for every single point that they can get. And given the quality at Ange's disposal, that's insane. You look through that team, and they are really good. As I said at the start, they are throwing on 40, 50, 60 million pounds worth of talent off the bench. They should be up at the, maybe not the top of the table, but certainly sort of 6th, 7th, 8th. That's what they're built for. And the problem that Postecoglou's got is that Marinakis is not a man who's got a lot of patience. So if he doesn't turn it around fast, it may well go quite sour.
Fascinating video that Forest chose to put out of Marinakis high-fiving each of his players as they return to the locker room after that 1-0 loss at home to Sunderland. I mean, clearly, they thought they were putting out a message saying, don't worry, still faith in this, everything from the man that matters. But my God, Sunderland's 11 points though, most for a promoted side after 6 games since 2013 West Ham. Few pundits predicted this. So much of it down to the coach, Regis Lebris, a true philosopher, an academic, a tactical brain, and really in the style of Arsene Wenger. They've spent money too. I think over $200 million. I think crucially spent it on the back line. They are 5th right now, and it's magnificent, ahead of Chelsea, ahead of Man City. Honestly, in a way, almost as if you turn the table upside down, it is utterly remarkable. Those fans have suffered, struggled, been laughed at, been memed. They deserve this in every regard. It's almost impossible right now, very quickly, Raw. Who's going to get relegated? We had a letter just saying, will a big team, from Mark Gusak at GFOP, will a big team go down this season? If I have to put a finger pointed in your direction, say, name the 3 teams that are going right now, will one of the established teams potentially go down this season? As
Liverpool, yeah. No, I don't think so. I think, obviously, United are the most vulnerable, but I don't think they're going to get relegated. I don't think that's realistic. I'd be more worried about someone like West Ham, Wolves, who count as established in the Premier League these days. Even Brentford. It is, as I say, it's so evenly matched. And we think about that from the point of view of kind of the big teams dropping points. But it means as well that those teams who are kind of comfortable mid-table, if you hit a bad run, if you have a run of fixtures that are really unkind, if you don't do very well, then you might have a problem. So I think... I mean, I don't think there's any teams in blue that will be getting relegated, Rog, just so you know.
Yeah.
But
who will go down, Raw? Who will go down?
I would say Burnley, which I know you don't want me to say, just a JJ Watt. Burnley...
Only because he scares me.
Wolves... Yes, on it. West Ham.
Yeah, I have Wolves, a team that rhyme with Burnley, and Nottingham Forest as my 3. There you go. You heard it here. And tonight we have one of the teams in blue that may or may not go down. Everton facing West Ham. Monday Night Football under the lights at the big Dickinson Energy. First time ever. David Moyes hosts the teetering club he was dispensed with after delivering the first trophy to West Ham in 43 years. Be careful what you wish for, people. Graham Potter fired over the weekend. Enter old friend Nuno. West Ham lingering 19th in the Premier League. Hammers have opted to bring in all 3 names as the successor. One Forest fan said about seeing Nuno, it's like seeing your partner leave you and get married again a bit too quickly. But Nuno will be in his element. West Ham are a hot bloody mess. Nuno's a pragmatic problem-solving manager in a way. I will say many of his West Ham predecessors like Lopetegui and also Potter just never were. Potter lasted a quite dire 9 months, too proactive footballingly for West Ham, which really is, you have to make sense of a swap. What do you make of it quickly, Raw? How long till we see Nuno's face meme-faced onto, photoshopped onto Graham Potter's head?
But the problem that West Ham have got is that Nuno is exactly what the fans don't want. And this is the issue. They're trapped in this kind of existential crisis, West Ham, because the fans want adventurous, expansive, interesting football because they're an established Premier League team, and that's what all the other established Premier League teams are doing. It's what Crystal Palace are doing. It's what Fulham are doing. It's what Everton are doing. There's a drive to be a bit better to watch. Don't look at me like that, Rog. Come on.
I'm just dreading this game. But
Whereas West Ham they tried to do that with Lopetegui, then worked out very quickly that that's not the football Lopetegui plays. So they sacked him and then did it with Potter. But then that doesn't work because Potter needs plenty of time to get his methods across, and he never had it at West Ham. Nuno is Nuno. He is pragmatic, he's defensive, he will make them extremely well organised, they'll be much more difficult to beat. I think they might lacked the attacking talent to win games, or win many games, and they're in a league where Sunderland have spent a lot of money, Leeds have spent a lot of money, there are relegation slots available. But even if Nuno keeps them up, the problem will recur in the next 12 to 18 months, because the fans will say, well, look, this is boring. We don't want to watch this. We want to watch something that's more interesting, that's more engaging. And they'll drift back into this kind of perma-crisis that West Ham exists in. And I don't think the ownership, the front office, I don't think they know how to build the team that the fans want.
God, I agree with everything you're saying, and at the same time, I think of this afternoon's game and I'm filled with dread. I wrote in the newsletter over the weekend that this is where we become the dream charity that opponents need and yearn for, and I am so braced for West Ham to just suddenly start to defend corners with vigour for the first time, cut us apart on the counter. This game has West Ham 2-0, Bowen scoring twice against us. It is known. Very quick letter from Mark Edsel, a Yinza. Raw, do the honours.
It's a controversial one, this one, Rog.
I know. I loved it.
Gentlemen, I come to you for clarity in a crisis of faith, which is our role. That's what we're here for.
We're not really football analysts. Or maybe that's a hobby. We're really theologians.
Yeah, with the Talmudic scholars of Postacodluism.
I think of myself as a Karaite, but go on.
Don't know what that is. I'm thinking of committing the only sin greater than supporting two clubs. I might switch. I'm a Pittsburgh sports fan in my marrow, grandson of a steelworker. Winning mattered, but never as much as what really matters. Put in a good shift, have each other's back, and stand on principle. In the mid-first decade of the 20th century, he's actually written an American word that I can't say, Rog. It doesn't work.
What's that?
I think it's pronounced oughts. I think it's pronounced. Do you say ought? The mid oughts is that what Americans say?
You don't say that because what?
Because it's a ridiculous word.
To make you feel awkward. It's like when someone says the word kudos, it goes through me. I don't. Do you know why.
We just assume that when you put mid 2000s, whoever's reading it is intelligent enough to work out that you don't mean the century, you mean the decade, because we haven't reached the midpoint of the century yet. We assume in Britain that everyone is capable of making that calculation.
And by 2050, you aim to be dead anyway. Is that
It's not going to be my problem in 2050.
Not your problem. My problem.
No, not my issue.
Go on.
Do you think they called the first decade of the 20th century the 19aughts?
You know what?
I'd love to know that.
I'd only just started podcasting back then, so I don't remember. But go on.
In the mid-aughts, the sorting hat... I've said it now. The sorting hat told me to cast my lot in with Liverpool. I recognised the city. I saw my people in its faces and stories. Any club can lift a trophy, but building a collective identity that stands for something bigger is a different project. Watching those Stevie-led teams and the Anfield faithful from afar, it was palpable how much they were never simply playing for 3 points, but always for the 97. So I chose them, and thus my Premier League identity. When they kiss the badge, it's my badge. The last decade has been heady stuff. We've been blessed with innumerable moments of transcendent beauty. We've hauled a heap of silverware. We've seen legends on the pitch and the sideline, born in our own time. Still, I'm left wanting. Over that same decade, thanks NBC, I've spent more and more time watching non-Liverpool matches as a neutral. Their clubs are more like us than not, each full of fans and players built from the good stuff. Passion, values, grit, integrity, and histories. Maybe it's the cash splash of the transfer window. Maybe it's our role in the Super League. Maybe I've been watching too much Andor. But I'm worried I've cast my lot with a tribe that's lost its way. I'll continue singing the ballad of Robbo's 70-plus yard lung-busting press. I'll tell bedtime stories of a blind wizard named Bobby who conjured magic with his tippy toes and his back heels. I don't think Firmino was blind. I've got to admit, I don't think that's true. Hillsborough will forever be sacred. But our current times have me yearning for something deeper that binds us, something scrappier, something closer to the source, something truer. And do you know what? I empathise with this point. It's getting harder and harder to feel the tug of the anchor on a ship this big. I've got a club in mind, a long-time side piece, but I'd love to hear you'd recommend consider jumping ship for. More importantly, is switching allegiances even allowed? Even as an American without hereditary obligations? Does fandom even matter anymore in globalised soccer? Thanks for your time. A traitor in the making, Mark Edsel.
Raw. Mark Edsel, that is a complicated one emotionally. Really, the floor is yours.
Yeah, no, you can't do it. It's not allowed.
Is that it, or do you have more?
There's just no absolute. I mean, what I would say is you are allowed to support more than one team, but they have to be in different countries. That's what I think the rule is. So if you're struggling, as I am a little bit, with Liverpool's kind of new identity as the billionaire boys, which I'm not a fan of, don't like all these expensive signings, secretly quite glad that at least one of them appears to be rubbish. I think the best thing for you to do is to look across the kind of the rich tapestry of global football and find some other teams to support. And at the risk of asking you to copy my example and also follow the colour of my jumper, can I suggest Heart of Midlothian in Scotland, who have always been my Scottish club, but are embarking on what may be the most noble quest of all sports teams, which is to try and win the Scottish title without being from Glasgow. They are currently top. They will not do it, but they do have Brighton's Tony Bloom, the man who's kind of masterminded Brighton's rise. He is kind of connected to the club now. Don't know if he owns a share or owns a portion or whether he's just working with them.
I thought they were owned by the guy from in Succession.
Rog and Rory. No, that was a fictional television show. That wasn't a documentary, Rog. And it might also, I think that might have been Hibs. Also a great club. I would say if you're struggling with what Liverpool have become, look for another team to support in addition. But no, you cannot swap.
Oh, God bless. My Scottish club are Dumbarton, because I used to have a cleaning lady called Mrs. Barton who I loved like crazy, and I think about her every single week, although she's long dead, whenever I find out their scores. It is fascinating. I will say, we do an annual study of American fans, how they're similar to English fan base and very different, profoundly different. We're doing the latest one right now, and a link to take the survey is in the show notes. Please take a minute to fill it in, because the more we understand, the better we can serve your needs. But one of the most important learnings to last year's report is that the fans have an enormous emotional bandwidth. Like American fans support like 3 or 4 teams: the Bulls, the White Sox, the Bears, etc. American fans do support, I think something like 40% of them support 4 teams already. But when a team stops speaking to them, because they don't have that geographical connect, because they don't have multi-generational connect, they just kind of start to, I'm interested in other clubs. When Chelsea changed their DNA, a lot of American fans are like, I'm kind of interested in Bournemouth now. Or when Manchester United just slipped below the waterline, wow, Crystal Palace surging. I'd rather use my time to watch them. That's how it works. So English fans will find this all abhorrent. You never change your team. But it is fascinating here. Fandom in the modern world, the global world, is more fluid. All the Premier League teams, no, they don't just have to win over the fan base, but keep winning them over, keep them there. I grew up in a place like you, Raw, where you supported your team in light and in lots of darkness. So what you're articulating is very, very painful. But God bless. The answer is only you can answer the question, Mark. And also, welcome to Everton. Mark, send us your postal. We'll send you a coveted MIB patch. Keep sending your letters from me and Raw with your best questions, your best stories to meninblazers@gmail.com. That's it for today. I'm off to Seattle this week for a sold-out show in that magical Emerald City. I can't wait to meet you, GFOPs. And thank you for all your restaurant and indie bookshop recommendations. I appreciate them all. More than I can say. Huge thanks to you, Raw, your Crown Prince of Harrogate.
Is the Emerald City not the thing in Oz?
I mean, it's better than that, is the honest truth. But yes, I am the lion, if you wanted to ask me about which character am I, which is, I think we were heading. This is Rog, sending you big, big love. Let's not take a second of watching football together for granted. Celebration, please be gone! And courage.